I believe that man is still in an intermediate stage between the animal and the divine. It is still in a stage of evolution. And to be able to take part in that evolution, to be able to cooperate with that evolution, I think is probably the noblest thing that we can do in our lives.
Purnamadaha Purnamidam.
As we move up the evolutionary ladder, we finally come to the human race. And the human race for the first time is a race capable of being self-conscious. And then as we evolve through life after life, we ultimately get to the awareness that there is something within us that is indestructible and divine. There is a beautiful verse by Allama Iqbal, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है. That खुदी की बुलंदी, raising the level of consciousness, which is really the goal of yoga. I believe that that is the greatest goal that we can have in our lives, and that is something which every human being should adopt. There are four main paths in our tradition. There is the Jnana Yoga, which is the way of the mind, the discriminative mind. That is more or less the way of Plato, the contemplation on the archetypes that are behind reality. You remember Plato's symbol of the cave, that we are all in a cave, all we are seeing is shadows. We do not see the actual objects or the light. For the Jnana Yoga, I choose Ramana Maharishi, who just sat in Arunachal. He didn't do anything, didn't go anywhere, but just his presence illuminated vast numbers of people. Jnana Yoga is the way of the mind. The Bhakti Yoga is the way of the heart. You have to open the heart chakra in love and adoration to some form of the divine. That's the difference. For the Jnana Yoga, you do not need a form. You can meditate on the formless divine. But for the Bhakti Yoga, to fall in love with the divine, you can't fall in love with a formless being, at least I can't. Some people may be able to do it. So you need a focus. Shiva, the goddess, Jesus Christ, Moses, whatever. So when your heart opens in love and devotion, that is the Bhakti Yoga. For the Bhakti Yoga, I would choose Sri Ramakrishna, who is a great devotee of the goddess. He was a pujari of the goddess. He dedicated his whole life to the goddess Kali. The third path of yoga is what might be called the Karma Yoga, the way of the hands, of action. Yat yat karma karomi tat tat akhilam shambho tavaradhan. Whatever I do, offer at the feet of Lord Shiva, including this interview. This is the way of the Gita particularly, because the Upanishads are more the Jnana Yoga, the Puranas are more the Bhakti Yoga, the Gita is more the Karma Yoga. The fact that by acting, you can also achieve spiritual growth. For the Karma Yogi, I choose Vivekananda, because he traveled his whole life. He set up the Ramakrishna mission. He lectured, he came here, he went there. He was a great organizer, and he was the Karma Yogi par excellence. The fourth, and in some ways the most fascinating path, is what is known as the Raja Yoga, the royal road. And that involves the breathing practices, the Hatha Yoga, what people in the West look upon as yoga, which are the physical exercises, are only one small part of the Raja Yoga. And for the Raja Yoga, I think I choose Sri Aurobindo, because Sri Aurobindo dealt with the higher powers that can manifest within our consciousness. And that is ultimately what Raja Yoga was all about. I would say these are the four major paths. You can do one or two or three or four. You can combine in whatever way you like, but you have to make a conscious effort if you want to grow spiritually. I don't think it happens automatically.
Shivoham, Shivoham.
What I tried to do, and I'm nowhere near succeeded, let's be very clear on that, is to combine some elements of the four yogas. For the Jnana Yoga, I first went to the dialogues of Plato and then came to the Upanishads. And once I came to the Upanishads, it is an ocean of wisdom. I think really they are the high watermark of world philosophy. They're so full of wisdom and so full of power. For the Bhakti Yoga, I started off by praying mainly centering the prayer on Krishna for 30 years. And then suddenly, by some mysterious event which I can't even place my finger on, some subconscious event, in 1985, my worship changed. Krishna withdrew and Shiva emerged in his place. When I went to the south, the first time I saw the Nataraja, I was totally floored because I had never seen anything so beautiful. So Shiva is, for one thing, he's Ashutosha. He's easily pleased. For another, Nikhila Bhayaharam, everything that is frightening is under his control. You're afraid of death, he is Mahakaleshwar. You're afraid of snakes, he wears them around his neck. You're afraid of ghosts or goblins, he's Bhuteshwar. You're afraid of poison, he has it in his throat. You're afraid of fire, he holds it in his hand. You know, everything, all the elements that are fearful, under his control. Therefore, if you worship Shiva, you lose your fear. And that is what happened to me when I started worshipping Shiva. I lost my fear of anything. And that was a great liberation. Then for the Karma Yoga, I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm going around the world. I'm talking about Vedanta. I'm doing UNESCO work. I'm doing the Auroville Foundation. I've now been in public life for 60 years, from the age of 18. So to my mind, all these activities in public life, I have tried to place them at the feet of Shiva or at the feet of the divine. How far I have succeeded, I cannot say, but I have made a definite effort to do that. And for the Raj Yoga, I'm not very advanced, but I do some simple breathing exercises. So I am trying to combine all the four elements of the yoga in my personal quest for the divine. I believe that all religions, without any exception, represent various paths to the same divine goal. The Rig Veda has a marvelous phrase, Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, the wise call it by many names. You know, it seems to me to be self-evident. Who are we, denizens of a tiny speck of dust in this illimitable cosmos, to lay down that the immutable, illimitable divine can appear only at this time and in this place and in this form? I mean, it's prima facie unacceptable. How do we know there are billions and billions of galaxies? How do we know how many planets are inhabited? How do we know where the divine has descended in those planets? We have to realize that there are multiple paths to the divine. The sooner we shed the idea that any religion or any individual or any church or any person has the sole selling rights of the divine, the better it will be for humanity. Religions have had a very mixed record. On the one hand, much that is great and noble in human civilization, art, architecture, music, dance, scriptures, literature, can be traced back to one or other of the great religions of the world. There's no doubt about it. On the other hand, ironically enough, more people have been killed and massacred and tortured and persecuted in the name of religion than in any other name. I think our our path and our problem and our challenge in this century is to try and reinterpret the great religions of the world in such a manner that it brings about, it nurtures this divinity that I have mentioned. Young people today around the world are in crisis. The old is disappearing, the new is struggling to be born, and they find themselves precariously poised between a disappearing past and an indeterminate future. Now, I know there's a lot of energy in our young people. There's tremendous energy, there's tremendous striving. I would suggest that apart from striving for their own, obviously, their own material, their own physical, their own emotional satisfaction, they should also involve a stream of spiritual striving in their lives. Whatever way they like, whatever religion they may follow, whatever creed. I'm not propagating any particular religion or creed. But I would like to urge that young people should introduce an element of spiritual striving in their lives. I think that will help them both to achieve their other goals and also ultimately to move onwards on the spiritual path. I believe that all our activities, including political and economic and other activities, ultimately should in some way nurture this divine spark within us and give us the opportunity to grow. Now, it might appear prima facie that the two things are poles apart because our politics is far from being divine. But the point I'm trying to make is that there has to be a system where each individual has the right to grow. With all its weaknesses, with all its inconsistencies and incongruities, a democratic system which allows for freedom of thought and expression, to my mind, is the only one that can help in the spiritual growth of the individual in this 21st century. I think there is a lot of spiritual craving in the world today, despite what people talk about crass materialism and consumerism. That's all there. But there is a lot of craving. There are millions of people, I think, today around the world who are striving consciously to grow spiritually, despite all the disasters of our times. And I think that if we can have some kind of a networking of these groups. What I think now is, instead of a revelation coming in one major beam, like it used to come earlier, the great religions, you had one powerful beam, one person or one book or one sort of teaching. Now I rather look upon it as a series of points of light, sort of a lattice covering the world, as it were, with little points of light everywhere. Each individual who's striving represents a point of light in that network. And hopefully that network, the light, will ultimately grow strong enough to encompass the entire world. There is something about India. Despite all the turbulence, all the ups and downs, all the invasions, all the disasters, all the holocausts that have overcome India, nonetheless the spirit of India remains unbroken and remains free. Ours is the oldest continuing civilization in the world. It has been based essentially on certain principles. And I think that is the reason why it has not only survived, but it has flourished. India has affected the world in many ways, not only now, but if you look at a timeline, you take, for example, the earlier period, when Indian architecture and Indian culture spread throughout the whole of South and Southeast Asia. Going back at least 2,000 years. If you go to Indonesia today, you see the Param Brahman temple, you see the Bhadra Vihara, the Borobudur. You go to Angkor Wat, the greatest place of worship in the world. And it is based upon Indian cultural concepts, and perhaps Indian artists also and artisans. So there is that tremendous influence that India has had, architecturally, culturally. So that is one stream. Then through Buddhism, which also arose in India, there was another huge stream of influence going all the way from Kashmir to Tibet to mainland China to Korea to Japan. In modern times, India has influenced the world through Gandhiji. The Gandhian experiment has really affected the world in a very positive manner. Not only our own freedom movement, Nelson Mandela, for example, in South Africa, Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States, the whole civil rights movement was inspired by Gandhiji's principles, which in turn were based upon the Indian philosophy. We are a country where there was a situation once when the three top posts in India, the presidency, the prime ministership, and the head of the biggest party, were held by non-Hindus. So it shows that there is this extraordinary inclusiveness in Indian society, which I think can be a model. I think we are an example that through democracy, with fundamental rights, with a free judiciary, with a very, very free press and media, we can develop in a democratic manner. I think we can be a model for a lot of the developing world. I have been in politics for many decades. And politics by its very nature is turbulent. It's no use asking why is politics turbulent, any more than asking why is the sun hot, or why is the water wet. It is the swadharma of politics to be turbulent. And if you look back to the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, to the Iliad, to the Odyssey, anywhere in the world, you will find that politics are always turbulent. But that doesn't mean that we should all adopt those methods. All it means is that there must be some people in politics who are able to stick to certain ideals and say, no, we do not take part in questionable activities. As citizens of India, we've got to face up to our responsibilities. There is a section of fundamental duties in our constitution. People forget that. Everybody talks of fundamental rights, which are justiciable, fair enough. But what about the fundamental duties? We don't perform them. And that is where we make the great mistake. So I think we have to develop civic awareness. We have to develop societal values, family values, interfaith values, environmental values, and values for a global society. I know there's a lot of idealism among young people nowadays. I travel around the country lecturing at universities, and I find a tremendous vibrancy. Now, I know a lot of it gets diluted by the time they grow up and they see the corruption around them. But if they are able to hold on to that inner spirit, it's tremendously important. What they have to do is to take advantage of the tremendous opportunities that are opening up today in India and around the world. And that is why I think young Indians can be in the forefront of a sort of global youth renaissance that is waiting to happen. We talk about spiritual development. But what do you do when people are living on or below the poverty line? Swami Vivekananda used to say that if you meet somebody who is starving, first of all fill his stomach and then give him your philosophy. And I think that holds true now. There are still millions of people in this country who are below the poverty line and around the world. They don't get enough to eat, there's not enough nutrition, there's not enough shelter from the elements, there's not enough clothing. I believe that unless we are able to remove the curse of poverty from this country, we will not really be living up to our potential. We have this marvelous phrase in our tradition, Bahujana Sukhaya, Bahujana Hitaya. Work for the welfare of the many, of the happiness of the many. And again, Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya. Work for your own spiritual growth, certainly, also for the welfare of the world. You've got to fulfill your social responsibility before you can really fulfill yourself. I believe that in addition to love and loyalty for one's own country, we have now to develop a broader relationship with the planet. We have the ancient Sanskrit dictum, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, Vasudha Eva Kutumbakam. The world itself is a family. Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yatkin Jagatyam Jagat. This entire cosmos is permeated, inhabited by the divine. Therefore, love our country certainly, but love our planet also. She is what the Greeks called Gaia, what we call Bhavani Vasundhara, the mother. This is the earth that has nurtured us. And look what we've done to it. Look at the way we've despoiled it. Look at the way our sacred rivers now have become sewers. It's a shame and a disgrace for us. And I believe that we owe a debt not only to the part of earth that we occupy in India, but to the entire globe. And that debt we must fulfill. We have to develop again a reverence for the earth. We have so misused this earth. I mean, the whole idea that the human race is a superior race and is given dominion over the earth and can do what they like and can cut down forests and can pollute rivers and can kill off animals and eradicate species, it's not acceptable any longer. But I think now we've got to rediscover a reverence for the earth. When the Bharatanatyam dancer dances, before she starts, she touches the earth in a gesture of forgiveness, sorry for having to dance upon you. You see? So the earth is a living entity. And therefore you find the Vedas, there are hymns to the sun, to the wind, to the rivers, to the mountains, to the forests. We have the Atharva Veda, 63 verses of the Bhumi Suktam, the hymn to the earth. It is the most comprehensive and integral statement of environmental values anywhere. So I think we've got to rediscover that. And we've got to readjust our lifestyles in order to reflect our rediscovered reverence for the earth. There are millions and millions of people around the world, including large numbers of young people, who are passionately involved in the environmental movement. I think that is a very hopeful movement, the so-called green movement or the environmental movement. Ultimately, the answer will come to us from the five elements, the Pancha Tattva, the sun representing the fire, the wind, the earth and the water. These are the Pancha Tattvas. And they are the ones which are ultimately going to be our savior. So technology, green technologies are our hope. Science and technology are double-edged weapons. They can create hydrogen bombs and they can create green technologies, depending on how we use them.
हठ छोड़ सखी चलो संग मेरे हठ
I believe that the creation of beauty is one of the great gifts given to human beings. And what better way to create beauty than through dance, through music, through poetry, through the creative arts, through painting, through sculpture, through architecture. The creation of beauty and the capacity to respond to beauty is one of the great gifts of the human race. There is a very powerful connection, for example, in Bharatanatyam particularly, in the dance, in the Natanam Adinar. That is a wonderful story. There are two great devotees of Shiva, Patanjali and Vyagrapada. And they are in Chidambaram, down in the south. They pray to Lord Shiva that when you did your original Ananda Tandava, the dance of bliss, in Kailasha, we missed it. So could you please come down to Chidambaram and dance here in the Golden Hall, in the Kanaka Mandapam? And so as a result of that, he appears in Chidambaram and he dances in joy and bliss. And as he dances, his hair waves and the whole cosmos dances with him. Because Nataraja is a symbol of the kinetic cosmos. Whether it is the waltz of the galaxies or the frenetic rock and roll of the subatomic particles, everything is in movement. And the Nataraja symbolizes that kinetic nature of the universe.
विरह का मंडल हाथ लिए बैरागी दो नैन.
In singing Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta Tatra Tisthami Narada, Krishna is reputed to have said that the place where I am most easily available is when my devotees are singing. So song is very important in every religious tradition, including the Sufis, by the way. The Sufis, when they do their zikr and when they dance around the Sheikh, it is a music as well as the dance, both, it combines both. So music and dance are both very closely connected with the divine. So I suppose is art and anything creative, in the final analysis, poetry, has to have a deeper connection with the psychic, what Sri Aurobindo called the psychic being, which is really the divine inherent in each human being. I believe that in a world that is full of tension and turmoil, love and friendship are the greatest gifts that we have been given. Because the possibility of the heart opening in love and friendship to another human being or to other human beings is a great gift. People whose hearts don't open cannot really partake of the glory of life. There are many degrees of friendship. There are many types and kinds of friendship and of love. The important thing is that it should be love that is selfless. Because any love that is demanding, any love that is obsessive becomes constrictive rather than liberative. So I believe that if we are able to develop the capacity to love or the capacity of friendship, whether that friendship is between a king and a beggar, between a Krishna and a Sudama, or a friendship between two friends, or a friendship between a husband and wife, or friendship between children and parents, whatever the relationship may be, within or outside recognized barriers and structures, it is important. One more kiss, dear. Her name was Yasho Rajyalakshmi, commonly known as Asha. And we were married when she was 13 and I was 19. And we grew up together. And she passed away in the 60th year of our wedding. We were going to have our 60th wedding anniversary on the 5th of March 2010. And she just left before that. But we've had this long period of love and companionship and understanding and mutual support, which has been for me at least a great blessing. We were together most of the time, and she was a great support. Whether it was my elections, I got more votes, I think, because of her than I did for myself. Because all the women would come out to see the Maharani, you know, what she liked. So she was a great help in my life, and she was the true companion. I believe that life is a mosaic of shadow and sunlight, of victory and defeat, of joy and sorrow, of Vijay and Parajay, of Sukh and Dukh. These dualities are built into the very texture of life. And I don't think there's anybody who's ever gone through life without experiencing these dualities. I believe that the way to deal with these dualities is to be aware of them and yet to be able in some ways to transcend them. That a certain inner detachment is necessary. Because these experiences are all part of our growth. And sometimes the unpleasant experiences are more important teachers even than the pleasant ones. That is the time when your inner mettle is tested. And that is when your inner strength begins to grow. At the age of 15, I developed some kind of a problem in my hip, and that got worse, and I had to be immobilized. So I was in bed before I reached the age of 19. I had been in bed on my back for 18 months. I suppose they've taught me something. They've taught me the capacity to try and remain as calm as one can, because this sort of an experience either makes you or breaks you. You know, you either go to pieces or you develop some kind of inner strength, and I think that by God's grace I did develop some inner strength. I was predisposed toward the spiritual quest, and from a young age I started meeting people, reading books, all of whom helped me on the path. I have had more than one guru. In my life, I have met a series of people who have taught me something new. And I've learned a lot from books also. Ano bhadra kritavo yantu vishwadaha. Let noble thoughts come to us from every side is one of the main leitmotifs of our culture. I believe that death is an essential component of life. You cannot have the one without the other. Jatasya dhruvo mrityu mrityu janam dhruvasya cha. That which is born has to die, and that which dies has to be reborn unless we are able to transcend again the duality between life and death. So death is not something that we should be in fear of. It's not something that should constantly hover over us like a black cloud. It is an inevitable passage, and therefore we must be prepared for it at every time, at every moment. Because every moment is an opening to the timeless, and every moment is an opening to death. We cannot predict it, and therefore we must remain detached and be prepared to face death when it comes. It's there. When we have our pujas, Yama, the Lord of Death, is right out there in front, as much as any other form of the divine. And therefore I think that death can be the great teacher. Death itself will not liberate us unless we get liberation during our lives. But death offers us a new chapter of development and growth, which is why the great Lord of Death is somebody not to be feared, but somebody to be loved. You find in the world tremendous differences in people's situations, in their financial, in their emotional, in their situational differences. You have people coming into the world who live a life of misery. You have people coming into the world who live a life of luxury. You have some young people who go away at a very young age. Now, in order to make sense of any of this, if you postulate only the one life, it sounds like having to go to college for one day and learning the whole curriculum. You can't cover it. So therefore, the postulation is that we go from life to life, from life to life. Each time, as Sri Aurobindo says, the spark within us, the spiritual spark, is developing what he calls a psychic being. And as we move towards the light, as we move on the spiritual path, the psychic being gets stronger and stronger. Ultimately, a stage comes where it can access the divine directly. And that cannot be done in one life. I believe that there is a divine destiny behind this whole human experience, behind life on this planet, behind the miracle of evolution. It couldn't be meaningless. We are participants in the adventure of consciousness. And therefore each one of us in our own lives, in our own activities, in our own attitudes, in our own sadhana, in our own quest, can make a contribution towards the evolution of consciousness in the cosmos. And that is why the most famous prayer that is echoed and re-echoed down the corridors of time in our culture has been, lead me from the unreal to the real, lead me from the darkness to the light, lead me from death to immortality. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam.